Surah Al-Fatiha, verse 4, which translates to Master of the Day of Judgment, emphasizes Allah's sovereignty over the day of recompense. It signifies that Allah is the sole ruler and judge on that day, holding ultimate authority and power. This verse serves as a reminder of accountability and the importance of striving for righteousness in this life. Detailed explanation. Yawm d-dīn, the Day of Judgment. This verse highlights the Day of Judgment, also known as the Day of Recompense or the Day of Requital. It is the day when Allah will judge all of humanity based on their deeds in this life. Māliki, master/owner. The Arabic word Māliki translates to master, owner, or king. It signifies Allah's absolute dominion and authority over all creation on the Day of Judgment. On that day, He will be the sole ruler, and no one will be able to challenge His authority or judgment, according to some Islamic scholars. Sovereignty and accountability. The verse emphasizes that Allah is the ultimate judge and that everyone will be held accountable for their actions on that day. This understanding should motivate believers to strive for good deeds and avoid evil, fearing the consequences of their actions on the Day of Judgment. Connection to other verses. Verse 4 follows the verses that praise Allah as the Lord of the worlds and the most gracious, the most merciful. It then introduces the concept of accountability, reminding us that Allah's mercy is balanced with His justice. This verse serves as a bridge between the attributes of mercy and justice, highlighting the comprehensive nature of Allah's divine attributes. God will be the Lord of the day when all generations of mankind gather together on order to render an account of their conduct, and when each person will be finally rewarded or punished for his deeds. The description of God as Lord of the Day of Judgment following the mention of His benevolence and compassion indicates that we ought to remember another aspect of God as well, namely, that He will judge us all, that He is so absolutely powerful, that on the Day of Judgment no one will have the power either to resist the enforcement of punishments that He decrees or to prevent anyone from receiving the rewards that He decides to confer. Hence, we ought not only to love Him for nourishing and sustaining us and for His compassion and mercy towards us, but should also hold Him in awe because of His justice, and should not forget that our ultimate happiness or misery rests completely with Him. This verse pays homage to Allah as the Master of the Day of Judgment or Requital. The word Māliki has been derived from the root milk, which signifies possessing a thing in such a manner that one has the right and power to dispose of it as one likes. See Camus. The word d-dīn signifies requital. So, the phrase, Master of the Day of Requital, implies total mastery on the Day of Requital. But there is no mention of the thing or things to which this mastery or possession would apply. According to the commentary, Al-Kashaf, the phrase makes a general reference to cover everything. That is to say, on the Day of Requital the mastery over everything that exists will belong to Allah alone. The Day of Requital is real and rational. Before we proceed, let us consider two important questions. Firstly, what is this Day of Requital? Secondly, Allah being the Master of everything even today, as much as on the Day of Requital, why does this verse specifically mentions the Day of Requital? The Day of Requital, or the Day of Judgment, is the day appointed by Allah to recompense good or evil deeds. The world is only the field of action, the place where one is required to perform one's duty, and not the place for receiving one's reward. The mere fact that man happens to be healthy and wealthy or powerful does not necessarily argue that he has won the pleasure and favor of Allah. Similarly, the mere fact that a man happens to be ill or poor or weak or miserable does not by itself indicates that he is the object of Allah's wrath. Even in the case of worldly life, would it not be a platitude to remark that a man sweating in a factory or an office does not consider it a misfortune? In fact, try to deprive him of this opportunity to sweat, and you would have earned his deepest displeasure. For beyond all this toil, he can glimpse the reward he is going to get after 30 days in the shape of his wages. It proceeds from this principle that the greatest sufferings in this world are the lot of the prophets, and after them, of the men of Allah, and yet we see them quite content and even happy. In short, physical well-being or worldly glory or luxury is no sure indication of one's virtue and truthfulness, nor is sorrow and suffering that of one's misdeeds and falsity. It may, however, happen that a man receives some punishment or reward for his deeds in this world. This never is the full recompense, but only a faint model which has been manifested to serve as an intimation or warning. The Holy Quran has spoken very clearly on this point, and we shall surely let them taste a nearer punishment in this world before the greater punishment in the other world, so that they may return to the right path.